I'm Bill Sarur, and welcome to another episode of Mastery Monday. I'm here streaming live at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Monday night. So if you're watching the replay, make sure to hit subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next episode. Today I want to talk about frameworks. So if you're building an app of any size these days, especially professionally, chances are you're using one or more frameworks. And frameworks are great. But like anything, frameworks tend to change over time. And chances are, if you're not careful, you may end up with an app that's a prisoner to whatever version of whatever frameworks you were using at the time it was built. And the best way to show you how to avoid that trap and to save you a lot of pain and headache later when the framework changes and a new version is introduced is to walk you through some code. So I've prepared a little demo for you, and we're going to do some live coding, and then afterwards I'll take some questions. All right, so here we go. Let me jump into some code. So here I have a React component. And it's a pretty basic component. What it does is if you press these buttons here, the number goes up and down. It increases and decreases. And so this is a very standard bit of code that you might see in a tutorial or something that teaches you how to do React. And basically, you're importing the React library. You set a state, which right now just has one property, which is a quantity of 0. You've got a couple of event handlers, an onClick plus and an onClick minus. And then you've got a render method that renders out basically 2 buttons and a span in which we display the current quantity from our state, okay? And so this is how it works. And this is fine, except that it doesn't really reflect what code looks like in the real world. So in a real world application, things get a lot more complicated than this. This is fine if you want to just learn about how React works or if you're taking a tutorial. But when you get into a real situation, you're going to have some kind of context in which this little component is going to live. So let's imagine, for example, that this is actually a quantity selector. So basically, we're selecting a quantity of, let's say, tickets for a show. So we're inside of an app where you can buy concert tickets, let's say. And this is the little control or little component that we use to allow the customer or the user to select the quantity of tickets they'd like to buy. And so right away, there probably should be a rule about negative numbers, right? It doesn't make a lot of sense that you can buy, a negative amount of tickets. So let's implement a rule that says, this number has to be, cannot be less than 0. So we would naturally think to do this here, right? So we're setting the state on the minus click, and right now we're just setting it to the previous quantity -1. But we probably want to say something like previous quantity greater than 0. Then we'll set it to previous quantity -1. Otherwise, we'll set it to 0. And so if we save that, plus works, and then minus, okay, we stop at 0, right? And if we're buying concert tickets in our app, we probably want to be careful not to allow scalpers to come and buy, 100 tickets at a time. And we probably want to put some kind of upper threshold. And probably depending on the kind of event that we have, that upper limit is going to be different. So we probably need to add a prop here, some property that we can pass in to tell us what the maximum quantity of tickets is so that we can set an upper limit. So for now, we'll just set up default props. So we'll go a static default props, and we'll say equals, and we'll give it max of, let's say, 10. All right. And then we can, in here on the plus button, what we can do is previous quantity less than max. Then we'll do previous quantity +1. Otherwise, max. Oh, we need to say this dot props dot max and this dot props dot max. Okay, and so now we can't go below 0 and we can't go past 10. All right, and so now slowly but surely the code is starting to approach what might be in a real application. We probably want to, let's throw in one more rule for the fun of it. So let's say that this might be a bit confusing to the user why they can't go above 10. So maybe we want to have some kind of a message that we display to the user when they hit the upper or lower limit. So let's come here and let's put our message. And now things get a little trickier, right? So how would we implement this logic? So here we have our quantity. We need to do something like instead of doing that, we're going to make this more like a proper function that's going to return an object. And we also need to return a message. So we're going to make this a little bit sloppy for now, but just to get our point across. So message, and that'll be null. Otherwise, we'll say max. Okay, so let's check it out. There we go, max. So there's a problem now that's sneaking in to our code. This logic here, this idea of maximum quantity and setting a message, etc. This is business logic, and it is completely entangled inside of our framework code. So it's dependent on or aware of our React framework. So it's inside this .set state, which is a completely React construct. It's got really nothing to do with the business logic that we're trying to implement. But when code is entangled like this, what happens when our framework, like if React releases a new version and they change something about set state or something about how events are handled, it gets really risky to start upgrading versions and implementing that change into our code because things are so entangled. So that's what I mean by an app becoming a prisoner to the framework that you're using. And so what you need to do is actually disentangle this code from dependence on the framework. You need to make it independent. So you need to move your business logic outside of your framework code. And so let's look at how to do that. So we can define a function up here, and we'll just call this increase. And it'll take an object that has quantity and max. And then we'll apply this logic for now. And instead of previous.quantity, well, we'll make this previous quantity. So we'll take a previous quantity, and instead of this .props.max, we can just do max, max, and we'll change these. Save. And now in here, instead of writing our logic in here, we can just call our increase method. So we would increase, and we'll set our previous quantity. Got to put this in curly braces because it's going to be an object. We'll set our previous quantity to previous.quantity, and we'll set our max to this dot props dot max. And of course, we've broken everything. Okay, there we go. So let's see what happens. And it still works. But now the business logic is encapsulated inside of its own function, right? So we've made this independent of the framework code. And we can do the same thing with a decrease. So we can have a function decrease, which is also going to take a previous quantity and maybe a min in this case. And then we can implement this code. Or actually, we'll copy that. And we'll say previous quantity greater than min. Our message will be null, otherwise we'll just say min. And we'll say previous quantity greater than min. And we'll do previous quantity -1, otherwise return min. And now here, we can just return decrease, pass in a previous quantity of our previous dot quantity, and a min of 0. Okay. Whoa. Super broken because I'm coding live, and that is what happens when you code live. All right. And there we go. And so now we've started separating our business logic from our, whoa, I think I just disappeared. So we've started separating our business logic from our framework logic. Hopefully you can just hear me. And hello, I'm back. Okay, so we've started separating our business logic from our framework logic. This code is completely independent of our framework, and we can go a little bit further by creating a folder here. Call it quantity selector. And in here, we're going to stick our increase and copy our code there. We'll move our quantity selector into here and rename it to index.js. Save our increase code and export it. So export default. Hopefully you're following along. And then we can do the same thing with decrease. We'll create a new file, decrease.js, move our decrease code into here, export it. And then we can import these here, import increase from /increase and import decrease from /decrease. Okay, and so now we have, let's see, make sure we haven't broken it. Yeah, it still works. And so now we have our increase and our decrease functions here in separate files. And we've got our component separated from our business logic. Now, think about the advantages of this. So now when the framework changes, when you update the version of the framework, you can change the framework code with very little risk to your business logic, because your business logic is encapsulated and sort of independent from all the framework code. The other thing is, look at how easy this kind of a function is to unit test. So if you want to do test-driven development, or if you want to automate tests at all, you can now unit test this code very, very easily, right? You've just got two functions that receive an object and return an object, and that don't require you to mock out or load a fake environment with loading components from React into it. You don't need all that stuff. You can just test it because it's plain JavaScript. So that's the point. You want to use whatever plain language you are using. So if you're using JavaScript, you want plain old JavaScript code to implement the majority of your business logic. If you're using another language like Java, you want plain old Java objects to implement the majority of your business logic. So those things that are really unique and custom to your own app should not have any dependence at all on any kind of framework. It should be the other way around. The framework should have dependence on your plain code. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. And just to prove the point, so the biggest change we can make to this UI framework is to actually go with a completely different framework. So what if, for example, and this is less likely to happen, it's more likely that the version of the framework you're using will change, but what if you needed to do this in Vue? So this is a Vue.js example, and it's the same component. We haven't implemented any of the business rules yet. It's just a plain Jane component. But we can actually copy our JavaScript modules, our decrease module, and our increase module. Okay, and now we have these as separate functions, and we can go back into our Vue component. And in our methods, we can now, first we need to import our increase module from /increase, and import our decrease module from /decrease. Okay, and now in here we can do const quantity message equals decrease previous quantity. Gotta put curly braces around that. So previous quantity is this dot quantity, and a min of 0. And then we can set, so after that we can set this dot quantity equal to quantity, something like that. And there we go. So that logic, I didn't implement the message here, but this that logic works. I can't go below 0. And of course we can do the same thing for our plus, right? So we can come here, change this to increase, make this a max of 6, let's say, and there we go. So you see, I didn't change this decrease increase code at all, right? This is the same exact code that I was using here with React. I'm now using here with Vue, and I didn't have to touch this code at all. So the framework completely changed, but my business logic was left alone and left completely intact. And that's the point I'm trying to make. So when you're using whatever framework it is, it doesn't have to be a front-end framework. When you're using any framework, you should make sure that you're isolating the business logic code, the code that's custom to your app, from the framework, so that the framework depends on your business logic, but your business logic does not depend on the framework. So hopefully that makes sense and that was informative. I am here every Monday, live at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube. If you find this kind of stuff valuable, interesting, I invite you to please click subscribe, hit the notification bell, and join me next Monday live at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I look forward to seeing you then, and have a great night.